Angus history has been a roller coaster. I mean, they went from being little animals to originally sort of 300-pound live weight, to well over a ton. My mother openly admitted she didn't like children, so she kept me in a pram at the bottom of the garden till I was about 5, till I could undo the straps, and then she kind of packed me off to boarding school after that. So
Andy and I had a nod to 1966 earlier and said that wasn't the only thing that happened that year. Do you know what happened that year?
I knew you were going to ask me that.
I've been Cammy.
I've been Iona.
And we are both
Fed by Farmers.
Hello and welcome to the Fed by Farmers podcast with me, Cammy Wilson.
And me, Iona Murray.
Today we are joined by the legendary Andy Frazier. Is it Frazier or Fraser?
Frazier.
Frazier, I thought that. Is that a bit classier?
No, it's French.
Is it? Okay.
So I know the Scottish phrase is Fraser. It's phrase as in the French for strawberry. So apparently my ancestors came over with the Norman conquest when they came and raped and pillaged the country. So I'm one of them French guys. So I've gone full circle now. I've gone back to France.
Back to France, yeah, and we'll definitely. There you go, Fraser. Wow. Andy Frazier means Andy Strawberries. Here he is. And of course, as always, we've been very busy at this time of year, so we're just diving straight into this podcast, and we're just going to say thanks to our sponsors very quickly, Crystalyx and Animax. Thanks to them. We'll hear a bit more about them later in the show, but we can't keep this man waiting any longer. I've already kept you waiting half an hour, Andy.
That's because you've been out there doing more important things there, Cammy, like shearing sheep that you do.
We did a 5 hour, because I knew I was going to be tight, we just showed them all in a winner, and it was like 5 hours straight.
Oh.
And can I just say, it's been a sunny day as well in Scotland.
Yes, yeah, a rare sunny day. We're shearing outside. Shout out to Cammy Jackson, actually. You know Cammy Jackson. Yes, he came and helped me, and I said to him, there'll be nice shearing sheep and that, it'll be good crack. I don't think he was expecting us to do a 5 hour straight run.
Not in the sunshine.
Is that 5 hours without one break?
No, just there was one mob change where we just sort of changed our comb and cutter, but then just straight going again. Well, I'm like, it's going to be tight, we need to keep going. Anyway, thanks, Cammy. So, Andy, good to see you.
Yeah, well, thanks very much for having me on the Fed by Farmers podcast. I know you've been on my podcast, and I enjoy listening to yours, and we all listen to each other's when we get enough time. So I won't say I've heard all of yours before, but I do enjoy what I've heard, so it's a pleasure to be here.
No, likewise, and I think I said to you before, the great thing with yours is that there's something for everyone. You know, we can pick and choose. Top lines and tails, let's just get that in. Let's get in straight off the bat, if you want to hear more from Andy. Top lines and tails. It's like you can, obviously there's names I know, but then there's others I don't, and you get a wee bit of the bio, and you're like, oh, what's this guy? Like, I mean, I think the best one, I think my favourite one
was you.
No, I definitely didn't listen to that one back. No, my favourite one was was it Tim? I keep wanting to say Tim White, but it's not Tim White's ex-Lana. I keep thinking White because he's Australian White.
That's right now. Yeah. Gilmore. Graham Gilmore, I think his name was.
Was it Graham Gilmore? I don't know. I keep thinking. Yeah. Anyway, what a podcast! Anybody wants to, just pick one out and dive in and see what top lines and tails. For me, that was just, man, what a man. He's breeding this breed called Australian Whites, but he's doing all sorts of crazy stuff. He's like changing the melting point of the fat. The melting point of the fat was the big. That came by accident, I think. Actually, they developed this sheep that would shear itself because the wool's worth nothing. But they put a bit of Texel, a bit of Charolais in it, and they put this South African breed that sheds its wool in there. And they suddenly found that they were breeding this breed of sheep, and when they put it to the steaks to the grill, that the melting point was lower, so they melted the fat, because nobody likes lamb fat really, so the fat melted down that bit quicker and at a lower melting point. So you didn't have to bang it up to sort of 200 degrees, it melted lower down, and that made it so much more tasty. And all the restaurants are buying it, it's just gone off the charts. Did you not say to me at Yorkshire that one thing you don't like about lamb is the smell? Somebody was talking about it at Yorkshire, they don't like the smell of lamb cooking.
No.
Because I didn't realise, but I think you talked about it in your podcast, is that they did a survey, and the most common thing, if we say like the housewife or the consumer, most common thing they didn't like about lamb was the smell of it cooking.
Well, it's also farmers don't like that, because you've been down on your hands and knees lambing thousands of sheep, and then come lambing time, after lambing time, you go in the house and the lamb's cooking. It just kind of puts you off a little bit.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Isn't it? That's a good point. Maybe there is something like that, a bit of PTSD. Yeah. The trauma. When you smell it, the trauma all comes back to you. So yeah, that's a fantastic podcast, one of many, of course, and there's a lot of deep dives through the years. But tell us a bit about you, Andy. I don't actually know much about your history.
Me, born into a family farm. Great-grandfather started the farm. Grandfather was an entrepreneur, got into chickens, made enough money in the chickens to start buying a few farms. And then he got into soft fruits and made more money in that. So kind of built up, not an empire, but built up a sort of reasonable sized farm. And I went into the farm I was away to boarding school. I think you were boarding school as well, so we joined
No,
together.
I wasn't.
Were you not?
I was not. I was
Private school.
Private school, not
well,
boarding.
No, not as good as that.
My
Dad's
mother-
a poor sheep farmer from your cut.
My mother openly admitted she didn't like children, so she kept me in a pram at the bottom of the garden till I was about 5, till I could undo the straps, and then she kind of packed me off to boarding school after that. So yeah, I left. I left the farm.
She's honest.
I left the farm in my middle 20s. I couldn't really get on brother and father, and went and made my own way in business. But I was fairly good at grooming cattle, at dressing cattle. I just got into that side of it, showing my own cattle, and then people said, come and dress some for me. And then it was, what products do you use for grooming the animals? And there was just the basic stuff you'd buy in the hairdresser. So I went off to the States and found out what they used over there and set up a business supplying all the grooming gear that they use. So I ran that for 4 or 5 years. I invented Limo Shine. If you probably haven't heard of Limo Shine, you're a sheep boy, but all the cattle guys, they use a product called Limo Shine that they spray on there. That was one of my inventions.
And what's the basis of that? Don't give it all away. It's
it's
a bit of oil, a
guarded secret. Now, there's one or two things in it there. Again, I brought some of the stuff from the States and the ideas that came from there. But
and have you sold that to somebody else?
Richie Tagg bought the whole business out from me in 1993, I think I sold the business out to them, and then having gone round to all the shows, because I did all the shows, every show I would be at, and I'd be dressing cattle. I'd have a team of people dressing cattle, another team of people running the exhibition unit. You'll know about that, and keeping all the staff, and then we'd all go to the pub at night and get absolutely hammered and with blurry heads. So all the profit was spent over the bar. But we carried on running it for a few years, and then Richie bought me out, and all of a sudden I was at the shows instead of with an expense account. So I did all the shows in the country, but with the exhibition unit, bringing in farmers to because they took that set of products into their own range of products, but so they wanted to market it then through the wholesalers and retailers rather than I was going direct. So they'd bring in, so I'd go along and basically back it up to Vicky Wines every third day, reverse the unit up to there and just load it up and just hand out drink to everybody and toured around the country. So it was 2 or 3 good years
gig.
of my life. It was a good gig. So I did it 2 or 3 years, and then, eventually I got bored with that, and I was breeding Texel sheep at the time. I just started breeding Texel sheep. My father bred Beltex sheep. My father brought the first Beltex sheep into the UK, or one of the first, the early guys in the Beltex. So he had Beltex, I had the Texels, and I was looking for some software to run my sheep on, something Pedigree. It was around about the time when EBVs and all that sort of stuff was coming in, and I wanted a software program, and there wasn't one out there, so I employed some guy at a vast expense to write me this computer software program, and so he wrote it all for me, and then I ran out of money because I was paying him too much, so I taught myself to write software. So from having left school with a lot of O-levels but very useless at maths and couldn't do algebra at all, I taught myself to write Visual Basic software. So I then rewrote all this program, and every time a farmer phoned up and said, could it do that? I said, yeah, sure. And I'd get in there and rewrite all these different things. So thing grew arms and legs, and I was selling that to farmers around about to pedigree breeders throughout the country. But those guys were already my customers from before, because still dealing in the pedigree trade, really. So ended up with a software business, and I sold that as well. But I got into...
I feel like we need to... There's so much I want to ask.
Sorry, stop me there.
Brilliant. No, keep going.
No, it's so good.
What was the name of that then? Would we know it?
It was called Pedigree Stockminder back then, and it was the number one of its day there.
Yep.
I don't know if there's any copies still in use. There might be somebody there sitting on Windows 3.1 still using one in the back cupboard there. But and then I got into writing software and realised that it was farming. It was far more lucrative to get into the software business. So I ended up becoming a business analyst, and I've no idea what a business analyst does really, but basically a consultant, as you all know, is somebody who borrows your watch and tells you the time, and that's pretty much what I was then for a few years. So I went and then one day I was on the train going into London in my best suit, and I'd go and feed my sheep in the morning, my Texels in the morning in my suit, and then get on the train with sheep shit on my shoes, and I had nothing in common with all these people on the train, and one day I thought, I can't do this anymore, so just jacked the whole thing in and went and lived in France. I moved to France. It cost me a marriage, to be fair. I was that busy being away, so I separated from my wife and ended up and thought, there's more to life than this, and moved to France. Met Wendy, and we moved to France and bought a farm in France, a small farm in France. So that's the short story. There's a lot more to it than that.
There's a lot in there to dissect for a start. I mean, interestingly, just you're saying about being a business house. I take it you were staying Middle England somewhere, travelling to London, or where were you working?
Yeah, I was. Worcestershire was home to me. So the Worcestershire-Herefordshire border, we used to live down there. So I still carried on living around that area, but commuting into Birmingham, into London. And I ended up working in Amsterdam, actually. I lived in Amsterdam for a year, working for not Costco. Costco sell the beef, don't they? Cisco Systems. I was in Amsterdam working for them, and earning huge amounts of money and doing very little and not really know what I was doing, to be honest.
What's like what's huge amounts of money was an analyst get, like 100 grand a year? Or
I was on $550 a day, I think, back then, which was, was a fairly good number, living in a duplex flat overlooking the
they'd put you up in everything as well.
It was a good time, but again, I couldn't be living in I thought, if I'm going to live in a city, let's live in a city overseas. So I kind of chose Amsterdam and lived in Amsterdam for a year, but it wasn't for me, to be honest. It's a lot of good-looking women, I have to say, but very tall ones as well, that matter. I remember meeting an Aussie one day, and he said, "I've got 3 words to describe about Amsterdam." He said, "Tall birds on bikes." No, I think to be fair, that's 4 words. But
tall birds on bikes. Yeah. There's a lot of bikes as well. Actually, I have been to Amsterdam once. A lot of bikes and a lot of they like all their smoky cafes, don't they?
Yeah, they do.
There's a bit of that going on.
But you need a bell on your bike. That's the thing. I mean, you can have a knackered old bike there, but you need an expensive bell and an expensive lock to lock it up with as well, because they all get nicked and thrown in the canal. So
is that right?
Oh, really?
Just out of badness. Just folk think they're funny.
Well, I think, maybe when they come out the smoking cafes, they just nick a bike and ride it around for a bit and then chuck it in the canal.
Of course. When I hide the evidence, just throw it in the canal. It's a life lived for sure. Business analyst into this. And obviously, the family farm was in Hertfordshire as well.
Worcestershire. Yeah,
Worcestershire.
My brother carried on running the farm. Brother and father carried on running the farm, and I kept my sheep there for a while as well. So I kind of got on with my father well enough when we weren't working together. So he used to come with me to the shows. He'd take. We had Blue Domain sheep originally, so he'd take the Blue Domain sheep to the show, and then he was at the Highland show one year. I think I'd got Texels there, and he got Blue Domain. And he was judging the Blue Domains at the Highland. And he came to me. I'd got my trade stand there, and he came to me. He said, "Come with me." He said, "I've seen a couple of sheep on a trade stand around the corner. Come and have a look at these things." And I went and looked. "Nah, I don't want those bloody things, horrible things." And it was 2 Beltex ewe lambs, and Tom Ashton had brought in. He came back and said, "I bought them both for £1,000 a piece," and that was him got started. I went, "What?" And I had to lamb them. So, no disrespect to you Beltex breeders out there, but I had to lamb the Texels and the Beltex year on year out, and I talk about the worst job I ever had. It wasn't
you wish you were back in Amsterdam.
Exactly.
No, it's okay. And with the family farm, I take is your brother just running it now? I take it.
Yeah, I think my father died. My brother sold the farmhouse off, but he's still keeping the land. I don't think he runs it. I think he rents it out now, to be fair. But,
right, okay.
But yeah, it's I've not spoken to my brother for a while, so I'm not quite sure.
Is that right?
What's going on with it?
Yeah.
You know what it's like maybe you don't know what it's like, but when families split up and wills and that sort of thing.
Well, do you know? Funny, I was going to say that. When you see it, there is probably that thing of there's more chance of it happening when there is something to fall out about. But like when my dad died, for example, all that was left was an old Isuzu pickup and a dog called Meg, who many people who know the sheep game will know. So there wasn't much for my sister and I to argue about. She didn't want to pick up all the dogs, so I get both of them. So it was quite easy that way. We argue plenty about those kind of things, but no, I think there'll be a lot of people listening can relate to, especially farming. We've had Heather Wildman and talking about how difficult.
I never actually fell out with anyone. I don't think, but hey, it was a little bit when my mother went and had a stroke, which was sad. So she had a stroke. She was in the wheelchair for 2 or 3 years, and she was anybody knows my mother wouldn't remember some real character, and that was all very sad. And I think some of it was over that, to be fair. But But hey, I'm not pointing a finger at anybody. These things happen. So I do. In my brother's birthday yesterday, I did send him a message, and one of his friends. I've been in Aberdeen this week, and one of his friends was up there, so I sent him a message on that. But he didn't reply. Nick, maybe if you're out there listening there, give us a shout.
Yeah, good on you.
So what's life? Are you still in France now?
Sort of. Depends who's asking. Oh, hang on. The taxman's not listening to this one.
Just now. I know it's a big week at Yorkshire.
I know the sunshine's out there. You could be in France, to be fair.
I think it's always warm down there.
Nah, we've had a horrible year this year.
Oh, have you?
The wettest year for 500 years. I don't know who remembers back 500 years, to be fair, but the wettest year for 500 years. So
I love it when they do those stats. like wettest year for 500 years. It's like, who was the guy measuring it back then?
500 years away.
Write it down. 20 inches.
That's it.
20 inches. Aye, it was a bad night. Aye. You always wonder these stories. Right. It's like, and like I'm not knocking that there is global warming happening, but sometimes when they talk about the weather and this, it's like, oh, it's been the wettest such and such for 70 years, or it's been the hottest summer for 40 years. Yeah. It's like, no, who was panicking back then?
Yeah, exactly.
Do you know what
they're blaming it on? But now they just blame everything rather than a big cycle. Now I get the actual average temperature of the planet is the indicator of the global warming. No, I don't so much buy into the weather as such.
Yeah, because you always get random years which are...
Always have done. I remember 1982, before you guys were born, there we had the heaviest snowfall ever. It was sort of 10 feet high and all the roads are blocked and whatever. And we were global freezing. Then we're going to go back to the ice age. It's just... And as I said, you can't... The planet is getting warmer, but it's... we won't get a political debate about the cause of it, but it's the way that they point the finger at everybody that we're doing it, and I'm not totally convinced they've got the reasoning right, to be honest.
No, it's certainly not farmers. That's the main point of both of, whether it's your podcast or our podcast, we like to try and drop that in now and again. So when you moved to south of France?
Southwest.
Southwest. Interestingly, I flew to Marseille, which is in is that south of France?
No.
For the rugby.
I was there.
Yeah, and unbelievably, from Prestwick Airport, I don't know if you already know this, you can do Marseille on a £60 return.
Wow.
Really?
Yeah. It must be because they're taking parcels there or something. £60 return from Prestwick, Glasgow
crazy.
Prestwick, to the south of France. And it's like a 4-day window, so you could fly in and, it's an easy 4-day return.
I was going to say, I think you were there for 24 hours or something.
I was straight by it. Well, that was the second game, to be fair, but the first game was 2 days, but the one in Paris was just straight back. But Marseille, we did, and it was roasting. It was in big yachts in the marina. And
it was.
It was actually quite nice.
And that is wholly the reason, and the only reason why the Scottish drunk them all out of beer within the first half of the game there, because it was so hot, obviously. That's the only reason.
Hydration, yeah. So...
Reduce the risk of fly strike and livestock irritation at grass with Crystalyx Garlics. Flies and midges are a constant pest to livestock throughout the summer and are responsible for diseases such as summer mastitis, pink eye, blue tongue and Schmallenberg. No repellent is 100% effective in the fight against airborne biting insects. However, Crystalyx Garlics can play an important part in reducing the number of flies that land on livestock. Containing concentrated garlic extract, 5 times more potent than pure dried garlic, Crystalyx Garlics offers a natural defense to biting insects, with the high sulfur compounds in garlic acting as a natural insect repellent. With a full complement of vitamins, minerals, and trace elements, Crystalyx Garlics balances the known deficiencies in forage while stimulating the rumen for enhanced animal performance. Make the switch this summer to research-proven Crystalyx Garlics.
So you moved to south of
Didn't plan on moving there, really. Went down there, got a pal of mine who moved there 10 years before me, and went to see him, and I thought, I could take his lifestyle, and I was still working in Amsterdam at the time, so Wendy and I rented a place that we'd just go down there sort of every third weekend or something, and then we started being a bit more time down there and thought, we could do this. So, we managed to juggle a few assets and managed to get a mortgage down there as well in France, and just bought an old farmhouse with 10 acres of land, and then I started doing it up and renovating it, and that got me into my next career, really, that I started. Well, a couple of careers later, I was renovating a house down there, and I thought, I quite like this, renovating the stuff there, so I got into renovating houses back over here, so that was my next career, being a property developer, so I've had a few. But I got into writing before then, but to be fair, I rewind and I got into renovating the house and writing books, and I was going to be this billionaire, millionaire, eccentric writer living in my castle in France, and sadly the books never made enough money to even pay for the paper that they went on there. Well, maybe some of them did, but so I realised Wendy was still working at the time, that we needed to do something else to get her out of working, so we bought a property, renovated it, and bought another one and renovated it, and kind of built up a little bit of an empire of buy-to-let properties in and around Scotland.
In Scotland?
Yeah.
Just all areas?
At Glasgow mainly. We were buying properties at tenements in Glasgow and turning them around. And then we had a place in East Lothian, which Wendy had a flat in Murrayfield. When I first met Wendy, it was great. So I got this flat in Murrayfield. It's like, come on in. And when she rented it out, I think a couple of ladies rented it. I said, you need to put a clause in there that when the rugby's on, we can come and stay.
You go in the spare room.
Yeah. But, so we had the place in East Lothian, and then we sold that. And one day we were driving. I'd never been to Fife in my life. I don't think I'd ever been there once, and because it's straight across the water from East Lothian, where we were in Gullen, or Gillen as they call it. The posh people call it Gillen. But, depends which side of the road you live on, apparently. In Gillen. And across the water, and we drove in there. She took me for a weekend in Crail. And we stayed in this battered old hotel called the Crail. If you're listening, the Crail Inn. It's not that battered, but it's kind of a rundown old hotel. And it was like it's like going back in the 1970s. But we'd driven through Anstruther, or Einster as it's known, on the way through, and seen this house for sale and Googled it overnight, and then came back through and bought it on the way back. So that was it was like a 4-bedroom house, a terraced house, a lovely terraced house, and then I set about renovating that.
So that was renovating as
Yeah,
well.
it's the first one. Yeah.
And what were your books based on?
They say everybody's got a book in them. I'm sure Cammy's got loads of books in them if you could find time to write it. And you too, Iona, for that. But everybody's got a book in them. So I wrote one, and then I thought I didn't stop. Then I carried on writing. But it was about my experiences. I think one of my biggest regrets really is when the Royal Smithfield Show went down, and all the youngsters listening to this, the oldies go, "Oh, Royal Smithfield Show was the best show on earth," and it gave me so much. I first went there in 1977, showing my own beast, and then ended up getting to dress the champion in 1992 and again 1994. And then I ended up being steward and sort of part of the establishment there as well. And I was due to be chief steward in 2006, and the show folded, unfortunately. And my regrets of that really, and this old ones getting together, I thought, well, I need to write a book about this. So I kind of came up with this story about it was called The Right Colour, and it was about a limo. It was supposed to be a pure Angus born in Aberdeenshire, but it was crossed with a limousine and ended up making its way to Smithfield. But it retold all those tales really of what we used to get up to down there.
It was like a fiction, kind of historical fiction type thing.
Well,
was
yeah, I suppose so. But I wrote it from the point of view of the cow. So the story was told by the cow and by this animal called Princess. And
what was that book called?
It was called The Right Colour, and it's from 2009. I wrote that, so it's a while back. But the right colour, because it was by a limousine, but it was black. So the Angus people said, "Well, at least you're the right colour." That was kind of where it came, and it was nothing to do with any racism. But that it was kind of Black Beauty-ish, if you know what I mean. And then people said it was a bit like Babe as well, the story. But it did okay, and the farming community picked it up, and we sold a few thousand copies, and all very well. And then somebody said it's kind of more of a children's book, really, because cows don't really talk. So I rewrote the book as a children's book, which I called About a Cow. And then I wrote sort of 3 or 4 more children's books based on. I loved writing children's books. It was such fun. And I used to, when Wendy would hear me, I'd be shrieking with laughter as I'm writing my own stuff down. And I really enjoyed doing that. So here we go. This is the life. This is the way. It's a children's book. So I got this series together and sent them to Polygon and 1 or 2 other stories and other publishers, and they all came back. Now, the children's book market is already flooded, and you need this and you need that, and you need the representation. And I carried on writing children's books. I wrote 7 of them, actually, which I really, really enjoyed writing children's books. But I wrote them because I enjoyed writing them rather than for any money, really.
Yeah, but how do you get them? And we should just put a number on this, because you told me actually earlier on when I asked you, how many books have you written?
57, I think, something like that.
Mad, eh?
What?
I know. Everyone's got a book in them, 57. He's got a book for everybody in them.
They're not all, to be fair, not all. Some of them, I started writing travel guides, which was great fun. I just used to go to a place and then write to, like a 10,000 words, a booklet, I suppose you'd call it, really, 10,000, or novella, they call them, whatever, the short story. And I go to these places and I walk into restaurants and say, look, I'm writing a travel guide on this area that gives some dinner. I'll give you a mention. But so I did 8 to 10 of those, which was great fun. We'd go on holiday, we'd be in Spain or something. I'd just write one in the area. I think I did one in New Zealand and various other places, and parts of Scotland, and just send them on the internet. They were going out for a couple of quid a piece, but I still get sales of that every month.
Typing this as you go, or are you handwriting it?
No, God, no, I couldn't. With writing like mine, I should be a doctor. In fact, with writing like mine, I should see a doctor, Cammy.
Is that right? Yeah, okay. I just can't. I don't know. Voucher. I cannot write to save myself. But so you sit and type away on the laptop.
Yeah.
And just take it with you everywhere you go and just work away, do you?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, not so much now because the books have got bigger. So instead of writing short books now, I'm writing books that are. That grow arms and legs, and we'll talk maybe about the latest one that I've written, or we've just co-written just recently. But
I do sometimes wonder about. I think I've spoke to you about this about. Like I see other people that do social media and stuff, doing books and writing little things, and I do sometimes think that I could have a go at it. Just through even like the police stories, and even growing up in the west of Scotland, the things we used to get up to as teenagers, like it was wild, like. Different for you guys at private school, but like us working class families, like it was a totally different world. But yeah, just even that, stories from the police.
Well, I'd imagine. I mean, writing books is different to doing a podcast, to doing an interview, because you're writing yourself. You're not getting the prompt from somebody else saying, "Tell us about this and tell us about that." So you kind of have to structure it a little bit to say, these are the things, these are the topics that I'm going to cover, and sort of work your way through. And I give advice to people. People say, "How do you write a book?" Write 1,000 words every day. You write 1,000 words every day, you'll have a book together. That's how it works.
Yeah. Get started. It's like folks say, "How do I get into YouTube?" It's just get started. and then get somebody to. So maybe I'll give you a shout then if I ever get to it, Andy. Do you do a bit of that for folk? Do you?
I do, yeah.
Proofread it and edit it.
I've got a couple of people at the moment wanting me doing similar things, and they want to write about their story and would I get involved in, which there's a couple of people waiting for me to get back to them actually that I haven't had a chance to do, but yes. But you're on the list.
Okay, fine.
And what's the one that you're writing at the moment, or co-writing?
Well, the one at the moment is a history book, and it's a long saga really with this particular book because I've got a love of Aberdeen Angus that kind of goes back to my days at Smithfield, and it's a breed that I've always enjoyed. And I was asked by the UK Aberdeen Angus Cattle Society to write their history for the last 60 years, which was last written in 1957, and they wanted a similar book written. So started getting together and doing some research for that, and did it sort of 2 or 3 years on and off to chatting to people, and then things happened in the Aberdeen Angus Society and the book got shelved. I don't think it was through any fault of the book, I'd like to say, but the book got shelved and didn't go out there. So 2 or 3 years later, through my podcast, I got speaking to a guy called Dr. Bob Hoke, who was in Chicago. And Bob's a historian, and he'd written other books, and he'd written the history of the Shorthorn breed for their 200th centenary or whatever it was. And he just started on the Angus one. So I said, well, I've actually got a bit of Angus history here. So it's okay. We went right back to the beginning of the history of the Aberdeen Angus, the official title, The History of the Aberdeen Angus in US, UK, and worldwide. So it this thing was a 300-pager that's now ended up being 550-page and a couple of thousand images. And as Bob says, we went right back to the weeds, right back to the beginning of the origins of cattle in general, or domesticated cattle, so right back to the cave drawings and how the Angus came together and how it brought in sort of 7 or 8 different local breeds to develop one breed that became the global brand that it is.
And do you do Audible for a thing like that? Would that be Audible? Not really, because all the pictures and stuff.
I think, to be honest, it's not a book you'd sit down and read cover to cover. I'm sure a lot of people will, and I hope they do. But it's a book that a coffee table style book is what they say.
Flick it open.
This one is that big you could actually put legs on it and make a coffee table. But it's you can pick it up open on any page, and there's like side bits in there. So not just the history of the Angus, or the cattle even. It's the history of the people. It's the sort of evolution of the people that were involved, and then take a side tangent when we found somebody who's bred Angus cattle wherever, and then go into their history and write a wee bit about those. And there's been some fascinating people when you go into there that actually made the money elsewhere and then put that money into Angus for various reasons. Some successful, some not. And we had presidents and royalty and all sorts of people in history.
And am I right in saying now that with Aberdeen, like whenever I see them talk about it in America, they just call it Angus cattle?
They do, yeah.
We had dropped to Aberdeen.
I had to have a bit of a debate with the guys in the States, because to them it is just Angus. Well, they call them Black Angus over there.
Because then you get the Black Baldies. Is that the most popular breed in the world or something like that?
I mean, it's
Angus Hereford.
We'll get a little bit political. The system over there is quite, I wouldn't say biased isn't the right word, quite strange really, that if the animal is black-hided, then it can claim the premium of being Angus. So you could have a black Charolais and it still goes out as Angus branded beef. So
right. So if it's a black beast,
So now the limousines and the Simmentals and the Charolais and all the other breeds, they're all black because they can get the premium because it's a black-hided sire. But like almost like a Scottish beef premium, like they get. Yeah,
right. If it's black,
Angus premium, but hey, it has to hit a certain standard. It isn't just because it's black. It has to get the standards to because the grading system is very, very intense. So it has to meet the right grades. But if it's from a black sire, then it can qualify for as Angus.
And it was quite interesting to get at some point I would maybe get cattle, and I quite like the Angus cattle. I quite like a belted Galloway.
Yeah, I like the belted myself.
I like a belted Galloway. Yeah. I have to say, I do like them. There's lots of them in Ayrshire, like lots of them.
Yeah.
And shout out to Alan at Crowlaw actually, and Susan. They had a good go at the Yorkshire show.
Congratulations,
and with the Texel, obviously, overall champion. Fantastic. So that would mean you get a discount on my first belted Galloway. But I like Angus. Like I was at a bit with Landward, seeing about the rotational grazing system, regenerative farming, and he was explaining to me about the sort of tell me if I'm wrong here, Andy. You've done the book, native Angus, and it's a much shorter legged.
The native Angus is
deeper bellied thing.
It's always been there. The Angus history has been a roller coaster. I mean, they went from being big animals. I mean, they went from being little animals to originally sort of 300-pound live weight, to over well over a ton, and then And then got in the 50s and 60s, they wanted the shorter-legged ones because they were exporting those to Argentina, and they wanted the shorter coupled animals that'll go into feedlots, and they could sell the animals at sort of lighter weight. So the animals, Angus got smaller and smaller, and the Americans got involved. And when Americans do things, they don't. And I always get told off for saying this, so they don't do things by halves. So if it became fashionable for smaller, then even smaller was even better. And they got these animals so small that they called them belt buckle bulls, and they wouldn't be much taller than this. Well, up to your belt buckle, that was kind of the size that they got them down.
Oh, the Americans went smaller?
Smaller and smaller and smaller.
For faster finishing?
It became a fad, really. The smaller ones get smaller until eventually we're all breeding for that market, because the export market for Angus was, well, in 1960, you should probably know these stats, but 1963, a bull called Lindurtis of Vals sold for 60,000 guineas, 63,000 pounds in 1963. That,
wow.
When you could have bought half of Scotland for 63,000 back then. And the other bull in the same pen made 180 guineas. So the difference between that export market and not. So they're all breeding for that, because they ended up in 1966, we had a dose of foot and mouth in the UK, and the export market dried up overnight, and they all started looking at each other and realizing we've got a whole load of animals that are not fit for purpose anymore. They can't really reproduce. They bred the milkiness out of them because they're all suckling on nurse cows. So they hadn't really got the milkiness in them either. And then in 1966, well, apart from the obvious thing that happened in 1966 on the foot and mouth, was that they opened the doors to Europe, and there's sitting on our doorstep there, we got the Charolais and the Simmentals and the Limousins, and we've got cattle, only belt buckle high, and all of a sudden we needed animals bigger, and the continental cattle just came waltzing in through the door, and the continental cattle took over, and Angus and the Shorthorn nearly went to being extinct back then. So the roller coaster sort of went right down.
So back then we'd mostly all be Angus, would it be?
Would have been, yeah, and literally overnight, within 3 or 4 years, all of a sudden, the Charolais was the beast to have.
And that's kind of what did it then. That wee dose of foot and mouth, and then just started bringing continental.
Well, they bred themselves into a hole, basically, literally bred themselves.
Yeah, with the genetic, right.
And then, of course, then we got these animals, but a lot of the people still realize, or some of the people still realize, the clever guys still realize that, that Angus still has the quality beef that the Continentals didn't have. Continentals was all about volume, and back then there was something called the intervention scheme, where they were putting beef into cold storage because they thought we were going to go into a beef shortage. So the carcasses had to be a certain size, which of course the Charolais fitted into that mold. And then some very, very clever people realized, we've got to get these Angus back. And then, the search started then, and there's sort of 4 or 5, top names in there, quite a few which I've sort of spoken to on my podcast over the years that buckled down and said, right, we need to get these cattle back, and carried on flying the flag for the Angus through those really lean years. And they were lean years because, they were bringing animals out of Canada. And the animals in Canada, by this time, the Americans had gone the other direction. They started going the other direction, getting bigger and bigger. They were crossing them with Chianinas to get these stick insect, great long-legged things.
So they're called Chianinas?
Yeah.
Where are they from originally?
They're Italian, I think, but they're just a very tall breed. So they kind of brought the Chianina into... They didn't, in the open herd book, they dismissed the fact that they did breed the Chianese into them, but I think it's quite widely known. And so they brought these... The Angus cattle back in from Canada, and they're great big things that with no back end on them, and just almost look ridiculous, But it took them that time to go big to getting them back small again. And eventually they get back to the now where the Angus is back to the number 1 breed again. So some very smart people that flew the flag and worked with the genetics, and the Americans worked very much with performance genetics. They were doing bull testing and weight testing and that going back into the 50s. So they all sort of relied on that data. At the time, we couldn't get cattle out of America. It was only Canada for various health reasons for livestock. So it took them a while to get that breed back on its feet again. The 80s were very lean years for those guys that stuck in at the Angus. But yeah, it's paid off dividends now.
They've got to have a love for it. What kind of cattle did your dad have, do you know?
What did he have? Charlie Cross.
Obviously. Would Angus be a good out-wintering cattle? It's
stand them all winter. I mean, they've developed now, haven't they? They will stand a harder winter, or they would have stood a harder winter. I mean, there's
part of the kind of with that thing I was at with Landward was that they like the deep belly. And you keep me right, Andy, because you know these things, but they liked the deep belly because it meant a bigger rumen, so like a bigger furnace for keeping it warm in the winter.
They call it capacity is the word that the Americans use. Capacity. And just going back to that native Angus, a shout out to Geordie Suter from Dunlees, which is probably where you were, that Geordie realised that all these big Canadian cattle had come in and they weren't native Aberdeen Angus because they brought in from, as far as he was concerned, I think his quote was they got heads like coffins and it's bodies like coat hangers, I think, something along those lines. So he sought out all the original families of Aberdeen Angus going back the way and preserved those families and then brought them back in. Geordie started it's not quite a breed, maybe it is a breed association on its own, I'm not sure, but the native Aberdeen Angus breed, which he got recognised through the Rare Breed Society, through Ada Henson's outfit there, to get them their own breed, and then he's worked on that and suddenly found that there's a massive call for native Angus genetics back in America. So
it is getting that kind of way. There's like I suppose like the Blueface Leicester. There's like two different types under the same breed. Is that right?
Shouldn't be. There shouldn't be, but there's different types in all breeds. But it's not quite like the Blueface Leicester, because the Blueface. Well, I won't get rude about Blueface Leicester crossing type because they're a different type of sheep, aren't they? But no, the Angus still, the guys are still looking for growth rate, but Geordie's found a niche there that's people looking for, the native Angus, and as he said, much easier grass converters, and they're the old-fashioned type and a little bit short-legged, but they might be short-legged but still weigh as much. So
and is the eating quality better?
I couldn't possibly say, could I?
The big thing, it was actually, I can't remember if it was maybe Dan Gilmer, actually. I think we spoke to him about doing a podcast. Was it, I think, with the butchers from NFU conference? He did a good input. I'm sure it was him that did the input. Apologies if I'm wrong here. At the NFU conference, he was talking about the grading system and about this in the States, how marbling, etc., as a factor. And we spoke about this with Kate, actually, from QMS, Kate Rowell, and about how here it's more this Europe system, and it's like
it was imposed on us, really. I think in the EU when Britain joined the common market back in the 70s, and by I think it was 82 when they came up with a European grading system that's a one size fits all. Where we are, they grade them on rounds, so they do look at the animals, and more so now they look at the animals to see they got some conformation system back end, basically, sort of depth of thigh.
Is this the States?
No, here.
Oh, here, okay.
Yeah, and then obviously graded on weight, and they do grade them on back fat as well, but no grading on marbling. Whereas in the US they have the US grades, and marbling is very much taken into account. And there's so they're very much more about eating quality. The Australians they're on that same route as well. But whether things will change over here, there's a call for things to be changed over here to take marbling into effect. Which of course now they've got a lot more technology to be able to identify marbling on the hoof rather than on a carcass as well. So I think that plays into the hands of the smaller traditional types too, I think.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think there is definitely something in that. Like, if we do have this idea that obviously a good cut of beef is a luxury product, and folk often have it, as a luxury thing. But it's getting it right when they have it that one time. I think is getting, if it tastes amazing, you'll have it again.
Yeah,
but if it, like, I sometimes find, and I find this myself, and all right, don't get me wrong, a lot of times it'll be like Lidl's steaks or whatever, but it can be quite underwhelmed, like quite disappointed. Like you think to cracking back meat here, paid a bit of money for it. All right, it's a Lidl steak, but good Scottish beef. You think this is going to be great, and it's just like. No,
I'd say I wouldn't knock Lidl's and Aldi too much. I mean, where I live in.
We get it there because they sell Scottish. So shout out to them for that. I wouldn't buy them anywhere else. But
where I live in France, we're down in Aquitaine, so we have the blonde Aquitaine beef down there, and blonde Aquitaine beef. Blonde Aquitaine breeders will be spit in there, but. They're big animals. They're very, very lean. They're short of hair. They're harder cattle, if you like, and they breed them down there because they'll stand the sunshine. They'll stand the heat because they don't have the fat on them.
Okay.
But if you have a beast without any fat on them, you can't hang it, so they can't. Otherwise, it goes black because the fat cover on the outside is what keeps the colour inside. So without the fat cover on,
right, okay.
they go black. So they don't hang the beef more than a couple of days, and then they don't eat until they're about 3 years old. Of anything up to a 9-year-old cow, they'll consider good quality beef. So. And then blonde Aquitaine, I won't say about the ones in the UK, although I have worked with a few of them that can have a little bit of an attitude problem. So with a bit of madness in them as well, they get the testosterone in when they're killed. So we end up with beef down there that we can't eat. So I buy all our beef in Scotland to take back.
Do you? And take it back. Stop at Costco. You mentioned Costco earlier.
Yeah.
Stop in at Costco and stock up.
Exactly.
Costco's pretty good, actually. It's American, so a lot of Americans will know about it. You ever been to Costco?
Yeah, I love Costco.
Costco's good. Like the food, the quality of food, like is fantastic. We used to go to it all the time when I worked in the police in Glasgow, because I think that's our closest one.
Well, last night night before, I've been up in Aberdeenshire judging sheep, and Alan Miller from Miller Plant up there had a barbecue for the National Beltex show, and they had beef on there, and it was tremendous steaks. And I said, "Where'd that come from, Alan?" He said, "It all came from Costco in Aberdeen." So
there we go. I think they'll be Scottish. Don't quote me on that, but
I have no idea.
I would
I would surprise me if they were around.
But they're Angus. I think it's Stoddard that provide them. I think with Angus beef. So.
What show was on? What were you judging?
I was judging Echt in just.
Of course, that was on. I seen the
outside
share.
of
They were
Aberdeen.
sharing at it. Yeah.
Judging
What were you judging?
Judging the Ryland sheep. So yeah, so I've got a few of those as well.
There's a good wee thing we haven't covered actually about that. You said about Beltex and Texel. You're out of them. What are you into now?
Yeah, the Rylands. I've got a few Charolais in France, so we breed down there, but I only breed them really for the table. We just supply everybody round about us with quality lamb. But my Charolais, they wouldn't be the size of some of these monster Charolais they have here. But we got into a few Rylands a few years ago. I said to Wendy, I'd like to get back into breeding sheep over here, and I've got very lucky that I've got a good pal, Robert Patterson. Hi, Robert, who keeps. Well, he kept one ewe. He's now got half a dozen of our ewes in there. But, so yeah, we've got a few of those, and I heard mention on one of your podcast, I think maybe it was at the Yorkshire, you got one of your football playing pals getting into Rylands there, and I'm thinking, Cammy, you need a Ryland.
Yes, you must have heard of Chris Boyd, have you? No?
I have, yeah.
Well, he played for Scotland, of course. Yeah, that's actually a good one for the podcast, just to briefly mention. So I'm standing on the merch stand at the Yorkshire show, and doing my bit, chatting to people and all that, and it was a really wet day. It was the first day, which was a Tuesday. And there's a guy standing at the bottom with an umbrella, and it's tanking it down, and I'm looking, and I'm like, first I'm looking, it's like, I feel like I recognise that guy, and I look away, and I look back again. And then like he catches me looking, he kind of looks and then looks away. But it kind of looks as if a guy that, he's used to being recognised. I'm like, is that Chris Boyd? Because obviously you don't go to the Yorkshire show. Like that's what's confusing me, because my brain's like, why would Chris Boyd be standing at the sheep at the bottom of the stairs on a pissing wet day at the Yorkshire show? So I'm like, no, I don't think so. And then I seen his teeth, and I was like, okay, he's got very good teeth. No, but they're very white teeth. And I was like, that is Chris Boyd. So there's not many folk with teeth as white as that here. So I just randomly goes down, and here his partner is quite into the sheep game, and they'd bought, you'll know Davy Mitchell.
Oh yeah.
They'd bought Rylands off of Davy Mitchell.
Off of Davy, all right. So
and he's just bought a new sort of small holding in Ayrshire.
Okay.
Has he?
He's bought a wee small holding in Ayrshire, and they wanted some sheep. They had 29 blackies. Blackies got a mention. What we're in? We're in about 42 minutes. There we go. They always get a mention. So he bought 29 blackies, but then realised that that's not such an easy game to be in, and like these are stone bloody mad. So like they're getting rid of the blackies, and they've got some Rylands.
So have they got any farming background?
No.
No, they just fancy.
Yeah, just wanted a wee small.
Did you say who Chris
got
Boyd
horses,
was for people who don't know?
Surely everyone knows who Chris Boyd is.
I didn't.
Okay. In fact, on that, before I do that, when Andy and I had a nod to 1966 earlier and said that wasn't the only thing that happened that year, do you know what happened that year?
I knew you were going to ask me that. I think.
Did you not think I wonder what they're talking about?
Hastings or Bat?
1966.
I think it might.
Is that 1866?
That's 1066. That's it. To be fair, Andy, that's not a bad guess. Steve, the fact you know 1066 is pretty impressive. And who was the Battle of Hastings against? What was the story of the Battle of Hastings?
Oh, well, I don't know the ins and outs.
It was Napoleon's big defeat, was it not?
No, that
was Custer, was it? What was
no,
Custer's American? What was
no, Napoleon was quite a bit later than that. No, that was the French invaded. The last time that the Britain got invaded by the French from Normandy. So the Normans came out. The Norman invasion. So everybody called Norman just turned up and said, right, we're claiming this country for our own there. So they had a big battle, which. I know what the 10. That has a connection to Largs, does it not? Because they had the Vikings were going to land at Largs. It was not some story about half the force had to come up to Scotland because the Vikings were coming from one side. I think that might be earlier, the Viking invasion, or that might go back.
Is that earlier again? There's a big story about that. They had to come up and fight up here and then go back and fight down south again within a couple of weeks. And
if you think the geography, the Vikings came across, they would have come across to Scotland and the east of the country because that's sort of straight through where they'd come in. So they may have sailed around the top and come from the other side.
There's definitely something about Largs because we have Viking Gar and a big Viking thing at Largs. Like in Nyla Butte.
The Vikings had invaded by that time. By the time the French came over, the Vikings had been here for a couple of hundred years, and then it was the French came in and said, we'll have a bit of that, and they just, they've only got the channel to come across, so they came across the channel and said, right, we'll nick your country, thank you very much.
And that's when Waterloo is the Napoleon defeat.
That would be 1870s, I think. I don't know my history. Excuse me, I don't know my history either. Might have been 1866. Actually, you might be right. I own it.
It was the
definitely wasn't 1966.
I think got to give England their due. Like I think they were about the only people that beat them at that time. Well, the Russians did too, I suppose, technically, but. That was a big defeat for them because thank God for that channel. Keep us safe.
So what did happen in 1966?
So England won the World Cup.
Okay, right.
So that's why it's like
Well, that's why a wee bit topical because there's still a bit of football going on at the moment.
it's very topical because
Fine.
as we're recording this with Andy just now, England. Well, tonight, it's the same day. We'll know by the time this podcast comes out. We'll know if they've won it or not. What do you think?
Well, I did see the Spanish flag flying over the building as I came in there, Cammy. So
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, like, my granny was pals with a Spanish guy, so I have to kind of lean that way a wee bit, just out of family ties. But like, whoever wins. Half of my household speaks with an English accent. In fact, 80% of my household speaks with an English accent. So
it'll be fun on your sofa tonight, then, Cammy.
I'm up against it. I'll get my sombrero. I know that's not quite Spanish, but it's that ilk. So we'll cheer them on.
Would she really be keen for England to win?
Nah, she couldn't kill us.
Okay, she's not.
No. We'll just have a quick word for our sponsors, will we?
Yes.
We'll do that now. Here we go.
Most foragers don't supply sheep and cattle with enough cobalt, copper, iodine and selenium, critical to digestion, immunity, reproduction and growth. When it comes to supplementation, there's a danger of under or oversupply. But when bolusing with Animax Tracesure, you can be sure every animal has enough for up to 6 months in one single application. Animax, giving what it takes.
Chris Boyd, I get Ryland sheep. That's it.
Yeah.
Oh, and Chris Boyd's a.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
what it is. He's
Who he
a
is.
Scotland. Well, he's a Kilmarnock. He's from Terbolton originally in Ayrshire. Played for Kilmarnock, a record goal scorer. Rangers, then became Rangers record goal scorer. I think he surpassed Ali McCoist as Rangers record goal scorer. He's not Scotland's record goal scorer. That would be Dalgleish.
Okay.
That would be Kenny Dalgleish, I think, would be Scotland's record goal scorer. But he was good. But he used to always get a slagging for not doing too much in that. But it's like
He's scoring the goals. He's doing the bit that matters.
scoring goals for fun. So it's like
Obviously a legend,
Yes.
then a legend.
Aye,
So I
so,
apologise,
yeah.
I haven't heard of you, Chris, but I probably have in some distant past. But
Yeah.
I'm afraid rugby is my sport, so I don't really I don't follow that. So
to your credit, Andy. But anyway, so we're on to the Rylands. Do you buy a few or sell
Started
a few?
just with a couple really, and
Is this
just-
coloured or white?
No, the white ones. So,
White, okay.
so just picked up a couple of Rylands. I bought the first one online, actually, blind. Well, just on a video during the COVID year, and Robert had that, and had a top lamb out of that went on and did well at a few shows. And I bought a Gemma lamb at Worcester. I was down at the sale. The one I tried to buy made a couple of thousand. I think it made a record price. I pushed it up to and didn't get it, but I bought another one for quite a bit less, and then we dressed her up. To be fair to Robert, he fed her up and sheared her out, because shear them early. You shear them sort of February time to get because you need to show them with the wool back on.
Yep.
And we took the game, and she waltzed into the Highland show and won Supreme Champion on the first go. And then we went down to the Great Yorkshire show and she won it as well. So, and then we went on to win to go for the Grand Slam at the Royal Welsh in the same year, and we just got pipped into reserve. Otherwise, we're on for the triple. So my wife thought this showing sheep's dead easy. This keeping sheep and showing sheep's dead easy. So that was a good kick at the ball the first time round, and then she died, unfortunately, as sheep do. So, but Wendy said, you can't just go in and win the first time round and then not go back again, because everybody will hate you. So I think probably hated us anyway at the time. And so we went back again the following year, and we kind of ate humble pie a little bit and had some seconds and third and fourth prizes, and we're not showing this year, but trying to build the flock up a little bit and get that going. So they're a bit of fun. You're saying about blackers, and I won't be mean to the blackers, but you're right. I mean, the Ryland is the polar opposite when it comes to temperament, because it's so docile.
Yeah.
Oh, are they?
And you see the kids and all the young handlers, you'll see that. Yeah, fantastic.
Perfect for kids.
Yeah.
Young handlers, perfect. I was sharing today at Robert Ramsey's, who's been on the podcast, and Andrew Boswell for Burnhead. He's just got some for the kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're great.
I think secretly it's for himself. That way. I'll get
I'll
them for the
get it
kids.
for the kids.
That, like, we thought, we've got white-faced Dartmoors, which are very similar, great wee nature and that, but it's difficult to do anything with a white-faced Dartmoor in Scotland. Out with Devon.
Sure. Yeah, sure.
no-
There won't be
there's-
classes for them in that now.
Well, yeah, and there's nobody to sell them to really, or if you buy any, it's miles away. Whereas if you get into the Rylands,
There were 60 Rylands at I mean, it's only a small show, but there were 60 Rylands there. So the second biggest, I think it was the National Beltex show, so there was 100 of them, but there was 60 Rylands.
60
Well,
Rylands,
60
eh?
entered in. I'm not sure they were all there, but and they lumped the colours in with the whites, which caught me out because I didn't really know that much about the colours. But there was a coloured ewe lamb came into the ewe lamb class, and she was just fantastic. And after me being rude about all these colours, I thought, my God, this one's going to end up being champion. But she was just a wee bit over on the mouth otherwise. So yeah, the colours. There's more colours, I think, now than there is whites. I think they're a hybrid of the whites, but they're a separate society.
I'd be tempted to go colours, but you think whites are better?
Personally, the whites are the traditional ones, so I'm standing by traditional a
okay.
little bit here. But you do find a lot of people are going into colours because they just that wee bit prettier, maybe, and
I would agree with
and
that.
a lot of the people going into them maybe if kids have done gymkhanas and horses and that sort of things, it's sort of natural progression to buy them a sheep. So there's a lot of you find a lot of the youngsters are people maybe, and I don't want to be rude to the coloured Ryland breeders, but people maybe that aren't sheep breeders or haven't had sheep before, picking up the coloured riders. So there's maybe a little bit less experience amongst some of the coloured breeders. But having said that,
sounds like that's where I should definitely go then.
Yeah, that's 100%.
What is a record like? If you wanted to go into the Rylands and buy the best tup, what are you gonna have to pay?
I paid $1,800 for one a couple of years ago, but that'd be probably as high as it would be. I'm after a ram just now, to be fair, and we'll hopefully pick one up this year. But £500 will buy you a Ryland for sure. Buy you a Ryland for sure. I think you want to go and buy a couple of ewes there, 500 to 1,000. You'll buy the best of the quality in that breed. I think.
Is that right? Yeah. And is there a Ryland sale somewhere, like Carlisle or something?
There is one in Carlisle, but the main one is it's down in England. It was at Worcester, but it's McCartney's, and they've moved it to Ludlow now, so it's in Ludlow in Shropshire. But that's the main sale. But yeah, there is a demand for the coloured ones at the moment, and the coloured ones being a hybrid, we're trying to get some ewe lambs because the first year the ewe we bought just had a tup and another tup the following. 4 years in, we hadn't got any ewe lambs at all, so I'm trying to build the flock up. And this year we had 5 ewe lambs, great, and 2 of them are coloured.
Right, so they just kick a gene out. The white ones just kick a gene out.
So I've now got 2 coloured lambs, which there's a market for them because you can, if they're both their, sorry, this isn't the Ryland podcast, but
no, but it's interesting.
Both their parents are white, and you have a black lamb or coloured lamb, you can register it as in the coloured. I think it's a supplementary register, but you can register it in the Coloured Society if both its parents are the same colour. If they're 1 and 1, you can't. So I've ended up with these 2 colours, which I'm going to do something with, but I don't want to spoiler alert here, but I had a couple of grandchildren born last year, and I think for their first birthday they might be getting a coloured Ryland ewe lamb each, so there you go. So
2 birds, buy a gift you really want for yourself. Yeah. I like that.
And where are your children? Are they all in the UK?
Yeah. Both my sons are down in Bedfordshire, down in England there. They're both working in and around London. Neither of them in the farming business at all. So I never really encouraged them to go into farming. I've heard you talk about this on your podcast, and it's quite interesting to see how the gene works through hereditary. I mean, my grandfather had a great eye for stock. My father had a great eye for stock. I'd like to think I've got a really good eye for stock. My sons probably have a good eye for stock, but they don't know because they never exercised that thing. I'd be interested to see if that's passed down the generations and see if my grandchildren actually, when they get a bit older, can walk in there and because it's a gift. I think if you know stock, I think it's a gift that you're given.
Yeah,
be interesting if that passes down.
I don't think I've got a particularly good eye for stock. I wouldn't say.
Do you not?
No, I don't think so. I don't think I particularly. I mean, I could tell a very good sheep from a bad sheep, but then I would expect everyone to do that, Whereas, like you see these, particularly the blacky guys, will be like straight away. That's the one. Like your dad saying when he saw that gimmer come in the ring, he's like, "Oh, that could be my champion there." Like, straight away. Whereas I'm like, she's all right. Like I'm like, she's good, but that one's good as well.
It's a blessing when you are judging and that happens. You walk and he's the third class here, and you think, "Christ, I haven't seen a sheep here, I dare put champ." And then one walks through the gate and you go, "There, relax now." You know when you pull that one up, that when you come to the championship, you got someone. It's already in your head.
There's definitely a champion with it and amongst it. Yeah. Whereas I would just be like, that looks really good, and that looks really good. Like I looked at the champion swale. No, it's a swale. No offence to our swale breeders, but I looked at the champion swale at the Yorkshire, and it's like. Then I looked at a couple more alongside, and I'm like,
but I would say with blackies, I'm a kenner, but not with other breeds. Other breeds, I wouldn't have a clue.
Yeah, but then that's all you know is blackies.
But that's what I'm saying. You're saying about swales, but like,
okay,
you know what I mean? Like,
but I suppose maybe part of that issue then is the fact that I've always just said, like, I was growing up around commercial sheep. So
but you still need to recognise a good one from a bad. You'll know that from a fat lamb. You can walk in the field and the ones with the tighter skin or what have you, you'll know that those are the ones that are going to weigh.
I suppose, but if someone brought me a pen of 10 good tight skin fat lambs and asked me to pick the best one, I'd be like, they all look good.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't think I've got a good eye for.
I heard a lovely story the other day, and I'll just repeat this to you. I was sitting in the taxi just after the Highland show, going back to the airport, and a boy from Orkney in there. One of the flats from Orkney, anyway, I can't remember his Christian name, and he was telling me a story about the county show in Orkney. The judge who was supposed to be judging the sheep, and then the goat judge didn't show up. So I said, "Would you judge the goats for us?" And he said, "Yeah, sure, I'll get in there." So his hands in pockets and walking in there, and all these goats are lined up, and he went, "Put that one there, put that one there." That one there, put that one. He lined them all up, level 20 of these goats, and then the guy said, "Which end are we giving the rosettes out from?" He said, "I don't know nothing about goats at all."
It's like we talk about a lot in here. See if you just do anything with confidence.
Exactly, yeah.
Folk will believe you.
Yeah.
But anything else you want to add before we head off?
No, not at all. I've absolutely been a pleasure to be down here in Ayrshire, in sunny Ayrshire, I have to say, after rainy Aberdeenshire yesterday, and I'm going to head back to France for a few days now just to catch up with a bit of sunshine. But it's been an absolute pleasure to be on your podcast and keep up the good work. It's on the TV, and I'm not envious at all of your grand good looks and your curly hair and your ability to shear sheep, and you're running around at 1,000 miles an hour with a glittering smoke screen behind you that Iona's having to pick up there and sweep up behind you there.
We've lost it. But no, listen, you're an absolute gentleman, and we touched on a few great wee stories and that there.
We need to get you
history
back
and stuff.
on.
But like that's why you have a podcast, because you have so much to tell.
Yeah.
So anyone who wants to listen to Toplines and Tales on all podcast platforms, same as ourselves. And fantastic stories, and as you say, you're getting some real gems of the show world and the wider farming world as well. So do check that out, folks. Andy, thank you.
Brilliant. Cammy Iona, thanks very much.
Thank you.